the last big piece of the XFL puzzle has fallen, guys, with the official XFL rules finally coming out. We've been waiting months and months. A lot of testing went into this, fan feedback, talking to stakeholders, and we're finally at this point. Kenny and I were on a conference call with Commissioner Oliver Luck and head of officiating, Dean Blandino. And Kenny, why don't you kind of talk about what we learned from that press conference before we get into all the rules themselves?
Yeah, it was pretty exciting, Riley. And one of the things I took away from what Commissioner Luck said was, he brought up over the past 18 months, the XFL has asked fans about what they like and what they want to change about football. Over 6,000 fans were polled nationwide, and the survey responses came back as such: less idle time, more fast pace with traditional football, no gimmicks, no inauthenticity. And they also didn't want to feel complicit when it comes to player safety. So that was a big thing. And he talked about they did on-field testing at JUCO colleges, semi-pro games, the spring leagues, very extensive testing, which was really cool to hear. And then, Dean also talked about his officiating philosophy, which I thought was really neat. The 3 C's of clarity. The 3 C's: clarity, consistency, and credibility. Emphasis on less stoppage by being more efficient. And I thought that was really neat to hear those guys kind of talk about what went into this rule book. And speaking of this rule book, what are some of the rules that spoke to you? What are the ones you like the most?
Yeah, so personally, just overall reaction, first of all, I loved it. My first thought was,
they're great, aren't they, man?
They're fantastic.
My first thought will be, is there going to be anything gimmicky? Because I just had a sick feeling in my stomach, and man, nothing's gimmicky. No. This is exactly, as a fan, what I wanted to see. Like, I wanted to see the kickoff rule, the punt rule, the special teams, the overtime. Just less stall, more ball. I wanted to see all of that. And I guess Oliver Luck and the XFL, they listened to the fans and they delivered. So, honestly, one of the big things that I'm happy to see is special teams be relevant again. My coach used to always say it's 3 phases of football: offense, defense, and special teams. I guess the NFL lost that concept, and it's only 2 phases these days. But the XFL is making the special teams relevant again, and they're doing that by putting the kickoff. So we'll start with kickoff, right? So the kickoff, the kicker is going to start on their side. I think it's the 30-yard line. They're going to kick the ball off. Mm-hmm. The return side of the field, the defense will be on the 35, and then the return team will be on the 30. So 5 yards separating them. Nobody can move until the returner catches the ball, or if the ball hits the ground, and it's there for 3 seconds. And then the defenders can go ahead and pursue the ball. That being said, once they get that, then the kicker can go. So, one, it's a safety concern, right? So nobody can hit the kicker at a full speed. That's always awesome. 2, you can't – the returner is going to return it, because if you kick it out of bounds, it's a major penalty, and the ball is at the 35.
I love the thought, Pastel. I love the thought that went into it. Like the NFL, when they were having this issue with the player safety, like you said, it's like, well, let's just move the kicking team up and they'll just kick it out of bounds past the end zone every time. This actually keeps the play relevant and exciting, but makes it safer at the same time, because you're not having those massive collisions where some guys in some cases paralyzed, on kickoffs. Like that's out the window, because you're only having 2 guys moving before that, which is the returner and the kicker himself.
It takes the wedge block out of it, right? So you don't have guys running 20, 30 yards head start and just totally going in and diving face mask first into 4 different offensive linemen. Guys, I think what's really interesting about this rule is how it's going to impact the game and game strategies. So just imagine this. So if I am a blocker, I'm on the 35. By the time the ball is kicked, say that the guy catches it at the 5 or the 10-yard line. So inside of the hang time, how far are guys going to be able to get down the field, right, with only a 5-yard cushion on how they're going to block? I would imagine that kick returner is probably going to get about 10, 15, 20-yard head start and running at full speed and be able to see the whole field. So the really interesting thing that'll come because of this rule are, if guys are getting to the 40 to the 45-yard line every single time, I wonder how many coaches are just going to be inept to just kick it straight through the end zone, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how fast guys get down the field and if they can cover the kick fast enough.
Yeah, the penalties involved with touchbacks and kicking the ball out of bounds. You have what's the illegal procedure penalty, which is where if they fail to kick the ball to the 20-yard line or they kick it out of bounds, the ball goes to the kicking team's 45-yard line as a penalty. But then you have what's called a major touchback, which is if the ball's kicked straight into the end zone, it's going to be placed at the 35-yard line. And then you have what's known as a minor touchback, where if the ball is kicked its accurate distance, but the receiving team lets it bounce or it bounces into the end zone, the receiving team fails to catch it, then it's going to be placed at the 15-yard line. So it's going to be very interesting and very, like you said, Gus, there's going to be a lot of varying strategies on how to approach this.
Like, I wonder if the pooch kick comes back into effect, right? That where guys just constantly practice kicking the ball as high as they can in order to get to like the 25-yard line in order to be able to get down and cover the kick fast enough.
Well,
it's going to be great to see what happens.
Go past the 20, right?
It's got to go past the 20 though, Gus. That's the thing. If you pooch it, you got to make sure it's past the 20.
If you look at the training camp highlights and with the news coming out of training camp right now, the punters and the kickers, they're practicing hang time and accuracy based off of these new rules, which goes into the punt. So the punt rules, nobody can leave the line of scrimmage until the ball is actually punted. Again, those gunners can't take off. So it's just emphasizing that specialist on the punt return team, making special teams more and more relevant. I love it.
I think it takes away the fake punt to an extent. Right. So if you have, for example, you might as well go for it. Right. Because if guys can't leave until the ball is punted, where's the element of surprise? There is no element of surprise. So you're able to kind of take that away. Well, but at the other time, like, when's the last time you saw a fake punt? Like, it's not that relevant at the NFL level. Like the Seahawks ran one. A couple other teams may have run some in college, but it's not really that relevant of a play. That's why I think it's going to be more fun to see, hey, do we go ahead and kick it as high as we can for field position, or do we just go for it?
Well, Glass, and also you can't really – it's so much harder to pin the other team back in their own territory near the goal line. So if you're kind of in that gray area, should we punt it and try to just – pin them back, or should we just go for it on a 4th and 5? I feel like we're going to see in the XFL a lot more teams on the 4th and 5 around midfield going for it instead of just trying to pooch kick it away.
It's really going to extend what we like to call plus territory for offenses and where they're going to go for it, because what's the net gain if you're at the 45 and you punt it and it ends up being a touchback and it goes to the 35? So I mean, it's a 10-yard difference at that point, so why not go for it? It's going to be exciting, and plus it's going to eliminate the fair catch too, or at least really extremely disincentivize it.
I'm glad they didn't go with the halo rule, and they talked about that on the conference call, Kenny. Just it's so much gray area between the player and the official having to determine that 5 yards. I know they do it up in the CFL, but like American football players just aren't used to that, so. It's already, you only have really a month. You have mini camp and training camp, a month of training camp to get ready for all of these other rules to begin with. That's just a rule that I could see being very messy if they had kept that in place.
It's so tough to it's tough to teach that, like you said. It's also tough to call, right? Can you imagine like late in a game, 4 minutes left to go, and then you got to call a halo rule, and that like negatively impacts the game?
Well, and it's a tough rule to enforce. Yeah, how many times as a returner he's trying to locate the ball in the air and he's having to run up to catch it. So a defender's just supposed to like run with him and maintain 5 yards. It's a messy situation. I'm glad that they just focused on keeping the action in the field, trying to decentivize kicking it out of bounds or in the end zone. So I really liked how they did the punt rule. I want to say one thing real quick, Kenny, and I just thought of this while we were talking in terms of the kickoff rule, and I wish I would have asked it. When it comes to the end of the game, in terms of onside kicks, because now you have the teams up, farther down the field. How does that work? I'm assuming there's still going to be onside kicks. Are you just going to have to notify the official that we're doing an onside kick? Is how I'm assuming it's going to be played.
No surprise onside kicks. It has to be announced, so they'll basically say, and then you can't I don't think you can really audible out of it, but there is no surprise. So, and then not only it's typical onside kick rules, just like the NFL.
Yeah, and that's a trade-off. I mean, sometimes it's exciting, but it works like what? You see it like a couple times a season max. I would much rather trade that off for action every time we do a kickoff than
well,
have those one or two instances during a season.
Yeah. And we'll get into that later, like well, I guess that's a really good leeway actually right now, but the point after touchdown, right?
Yes.
Like
perfect.
The reason for the point after touchdown for the 1, 2, 3 point, you don't really need the onside kick rule, right?
No.
Like it's really not going to be as relevant as it is in the NFL.
That and the comeback period, which we'll talk about later.
And the comeback period. So it kind of de-incentivizes the onside kick rule in general. So.
And just how awesome is that, by the way? The point after, like, you get the ball from the 2,
at first,
you get 1 point.
It's growing.
Ball from the 5, 2 points. Ball from the 10, freaking 3 points. I love it, man. I think it's some old school backyard football. I relate to it. I love it, man.
That's right.
Yeah, I was skeptical at first. I thought that 3-point kind of just, to me, it sounded gimmicky. But I'm getting into it the more I hear about it, and I know why they do it, because you can see the trend with all of these rules is, they want games to remain close. You're never out of the game. They want to keep that viewer, on the television, in the stands. They want to keep their focus on the game and not switching channels and whatnot. So I understand why they did it. It just sounded a little gimmicky to me, but I think once it's on the field and you see them line up for a 3-point conversion on the 10-yard line at the end of a game, it's going to be silly.
Well, as a fan, and there's like, say, a minute and a half left, and I'm down by 18. In theory, I still have a chance to score in two conversions, right? You're 2 scores down. So, I mean, that's what the fans live for, is the hope to come back and win a game, and that leaves the door open for it. Not to mention, Oliver Luck did say every one of these rules had a underlining meaning. Like, there's one major meaning for every one of these rules.
Yeah.
So whether it was special teams to not kick it out of bounds and make special teams relevant again, whether it was the extra point rule to keep games close, every one of these rules, there was a panel of people that said, hey, this is the main reason for us to have that rule in place.
Yep. It's smart. You're going to keep eyes on your product longer if there's always a chance for your team to come back.
Yes.
Or just the other team in general. It doesn't have to be your team, but just the team.
Let's real quickly go over the double forward pass. This is a rule that I think a lot of people just didn't understand, is what I'm guessing, when it first came out as a potential rule. But to me, it's really not a big deal. If anything, it just simplifies it, because in the NFL, it has to be a lateral. You can't have multiple forward passes. Yeah. When there's fumbles, was it a fumble? Was it an incomplete pass? This just totally gets rid of all that. As long as it's behind the line of scrimmage, you get 1 pass behind the line of scrimmage. That's why it's called double forward pass.
That's right.
You can't have the offense just chucking it constantly across the field until someone's open downfield. Nothing crazy like that. It just eliminates that, it eliminates that confusion between a lateral and an incomplete or forward pass that the NFL has.
Yeah, when I was thinking about it even more, I think it's going to show. So it borders the line of gimmicky, but it's really going to mess with defenses. So when we talked about a lot of these rules, just as we were going back and forth today, like, there are no gimmicks. This one's the only one, in my opinion, that's a little bit kind of that gray line.
How, though? I don't understand how.
I don't see it.
They still have to be behind the line of scrimmage.
Let me tell you why. Because if a guy is moving forward and I'm a defensive player and I'm actually moving towards me, right? Like, I'm a cornerback and I'm a safety, and a guy is making an action that is directly towards me down the field, I'm going to go ahead and bite on that. Now, you're taught to not go forward until somebody crosses the line of scrimmage if you're in coverage, or if you're safety and you're in the middle of the field. But if I'm moving forward, it's human reaction to go and find that guy. So I think you're going to see a decent amount of double pass trick plays just kind of playing off this rule. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to work, but I'm saying that I think you're going to see more of it than you would see in college or the NFL.
How much more is that guy going to back up? Like, I can't see a play in my mind that says, like, I'm going to throw the ball 2 yards forward to my receiver that's already 2 yards off the line of scrimmage.
If I'm a quarterback, listen, if I'm a quarterback, I'm about 5 in the shotgun, I'm about 5 yards back. Screen passes, right? I generally take 3 or 4 steps back. So you're talking about 7 or 8 yards right there. 7 or 8 yards from the line of scrimmage, and you have a running back that's flaring out. So I catch the ball, right? Say I catch the ball and I've got 4 yards to make a move forward and then throw the ball to bite the corner. I think it's a little bit more prevalent than you think.
It's going to be interesting.
Out of that play.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm with I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I'm curious to see if it's going to be more gimmicky, or if it's actually going to look like really cool. I hope it looks really cool. I like
sure
the
gimmicky
idea
is
of
the
it.
right word. I feel like it's another rule that puts the advantage in the offense's hands. And as we go through these rules, you'll see a theme. And there's one rule in particular that I want to talk about where I just feel like the balance could get out of hand. And that's the only concern I have when I look at these rules is I know, people love scoring, people love offense, but at what point is it just too much of an advantage? So I see what you're saying, Gless. That could be just another factor in terms of offenses having an overwhelming advantage over a defense.
What's going to be interesting is we're really going to see which coaches are kind of the more creative than others, and who knows? Do guys like Mark Trestman and June Jones have an advantage because they've coached in like the CFL and the US?
They've been exposed to more different rules,
Yeah,
that's a great point, Kenny. I didn't even think about that.
I'm curious to see if they pick it up faster than everybody else.
It's going to be fascinating to see how these coaches handle, because it's 90% of these rules are NFL rules, but these 10% of rules, they're pretty significant changes, and a lot of strategy is involved, like game altering type of rules. If you don't play it right. So we'll see what coaches are better at taking advantage of these rules than others. Let's go to the final one, which is one of the more talked about rules, is the overtime rule. Now, there's an interesting component to this, which I actually asked on our conference call. But Kenny, do you want to try to take a crack at the overtime rule and just what it is in terms of once we get to overtime? It's nothing like NFL, and it's a little like college, but not really.
Sort of, yeah. So essentially, you're going to get 5 rounds of alternating single-play possessions like an NHL shootout or soccer penalty kicks. If you've ever watched the World Cup or anything like that, you know what penalty kicks are. And so a round's going to consist of 1 offensive play per team. They're going to start at the 5-yard line, and the offensive team has 1 play to score. Essentially, if you score, you get 2 points. If you don't score, it's no points. The defense wins that round, and then the other offense comes on the field, and they're going to continue alternating until someone's mathematically eliminated. Or if they're still tied after 5 rounds, then they'll go sudden death. Whatever team doesn't score and the other team scores, then obviously it's over after that. So that's gonna be fun. I tremendously like that. I think it gives both teams fair shots to win in overtime, and it's not this drawn out overtime like we're used to.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. You don't have to play a whole quarter and then potentially end in a tie. You're gonna get a winner. Everyone gets the same shot, and you're gonna be out in 10 minutes. Is what the XFL is saying. The question that I asked is if you paid attention to the rules as they were discussing them leading up to today, it was that all 4 units, both teams' offenses and defenses on the field at the same time at opposite end zones. When they came out with the videos and the graphics, they just showed that the play from one end zone. So I asked, are we still expecting to have all of these units on the field at the same time, alternating? They said that's still a work in progress. They're still testing it through training camp. So we do not have a definitive answer as of the recording of this podcast, which I thought was very interesting. And it's been my concern all along with this rule is I think it's awesome. I think it could be really epic if we ever get an overtime game. But logistically, I just didn't know how it would work with the referees having to get from one end of the field to the other in like a timely manner. So I think that's probably what they're trying to sort out is how do we keep the pace going so it doesn't drag on.
And I don't remember, I apologize, I don't remember if it was Commissioner Luck or Dean Blandino who said that one of the things they were looking at with keeping guys, instead of not having at the opposite ends of the field, but keep them on the same side, is if we go opposite sides of the field, do we really want to break up the coaches and ruin that continuity and things they could do and make and stuff like that. So I liked that I like that point where he brought up and said, if we keep it on the same side, it keeps the coaching staffs together and it allows them to make changes right there instead of having to be 70 yards away from the other side of the field.
The only crappy part is being the fan on the other side.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, exactly.
Come on, show me some love over here. I paid just as much money as that guy on that side.
No, you're exactly right, man. You're exactly right. Maybe they'll do it like tennis matches, Pastel. After a certain amount of attempts, they all come to the other side of the field.
But But guys, when we think about overtime, what I love about the overtime rules is that obviously, this is all new for us, right? This is a brand new concept in any level of football. But think about the strategy that goes into this. So let me explain. Generally, teams have 1 to 2 really good 2-point conversion plays, right? You practice them every week. You practice them in training camp. Offensive coordinator has it circled on his play sheet. Hey, if we're going to go for 2, these are the plays that I love. Yeah. Well, what if I'm up 1-0 or 2-0, right? Like I can't run that third play essentially, I can't run that same play to win the game, right? Or what if it's 2-2 and I've already used my best 2 plays? Or what if it's 1-1 and I know that we're at the minimum going to go to 4? I may not want to use my best play.
Or Gless, so that they've been doing this the whole game, with these attempts after touchdowns. It's very similar plays. Yeah. At that point, like you're going to have to be repeating some plays, aren't you?
And Commissioner Luck said that because someone asked him why it was worth 2 points when you score in overtime, and he said we just wanted to keep it the same as when you go for it
of scoring.
Point after attempt from the 5. So,
but I think the strategy is going to be so much fun to watch. Like, just see how it's working in defensive coordinators and play callers' head. I think it's been fantastic.
Yeah, the overtime rule for me is one of my favorite. I think that and the kickoff, and then the comeback period, which we're going to get to here very shortly. Let's move on to the time changing rules, and there's quite a few of them that you're not going to be used to when you watch them, but they make sense when you really take a look at them and break them down. Let's start with the first one, which is probably the most overall important rule because it just, completely alters the pace of play, and that's the 25-second play clock. When I interviewed Oliver Luck up in Washington, D.C. at their fan event, I asked him which rule he was most excited about or that he was most anticipating or intrigued to watch on the field, and it was the 25-second play clock because ultimately it just kind of affects everything else that you do on the field.
Yeah, it's so different than any other college or professional football league right now because it is full go. Like that's the biggest thing. Players right now, a big focus in training camp has been conditioning. Heck, even Dean Blandino talked about conditioning of the referees on a 25-second clock today. So you've really got to be on the ball with your substitution packages, with your audibles, your checks. Everything you do has to be in triple time because that 25 seconds is going to go quick. And you think we see delayed games in the NFL and you're like, how can they do that with a 40-second play clock? Imagine 25 seconds now.
And I love the speed of the game, and I love the 20-second play clock. I love everything about it. I think the first couple weekends, I think we may see it may be a little bit of fiasco from getting guys in. It may get a little bit sloppy because coaches are going to have to get used to it. Yeah. There's only so much you can do in training camp to simulate that kind of stuff when you get in between the lines and it counts for real. So I wonder how coaches are going to try to utilize this in practice and throughout training camp to try to get used to it as best they can.
Well, so I disagree because honestly, like during training camp, yes, they're going to have those live scrimmages to kind of exercise these rules. And I understand that's only a month long, but that's why they got the earpieces and the helmets for all the skill players, man. So like as you're coming up to the ball, the coach is saying, "Hey, this is what we're going to run. This is how we're going to do it." But the substitution package is all up in here in the ear package or in the ear. Instead of like a normal NFL game where you have to go to the huddle and they have to facilitate that message because only the QB has
I mean, if I'm calling a play and the ball's being set and the clock's already – I'm sorry, the ball's not being set, but the clock is running.
The clock is not running until the ball is set.
That's what I just said, Pastel. The clock doesn't start, right? So the play clock. So the play clock is running, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to figure out what play I'm trying to call. I've got to get dudes on the field, get guys off the field. So I may be calling the play inside of all the skill players,
but making sure you have the right personnel on the field.
Make sure you're right. I'm just saying the clock is going to be more detrimental, and I think more for the coaches to get used to more than the players.
Especially from a defensive side, Gless. Those defenses in the second half, by the end of the game, they're going to be gassed, man. I mean, they talked about that. There's a 25-second play clock, so the average time between plays, because they have to spot the ball, is 33 seconds, like 32, 33 seconds. Woo. If you're a defensive player, another huge advantage to the offense because offenses are used to moving quick. They're substituting receivers and sets.
Yeah.
Defensive units are going to have a much tougher time, in my opinion, adjusting to this rule than the offenses will.
Yeah, defenses are reactive, right? Like, what is the offense doing? What formation? That tells me what I'm doing. And you don't get time. You just got to kind of go and hope the communication is right on the field. So,
well, and then guys, on top of the 25-second play clock, like another time change rule is it's a running game clock. It runs consistently. Like there's no, unless you call a timeout or it's the inside the 2 minutes of each half,
or a dead ball for like penalties and whatnot.
Right. Even like I said, it's always going to run. So conditioning is going to be so paramount. We're going to see very quickly who's going to come out of camp, best condition for sure.
It might not even be, Kenny. It may not even be when we start seeing how these teams stack up in terms of wins and losses. It may not even be the teams with the best starting lineups. It may be the teams with the best depth. I mean, seriously, because you're going to have to dig into, and you only have 52 guys on the roster, I believe, 50 to 52.
50. I think it's 50. 50 is the official number, I think.
So, the depth of these teams is going to be paramount in terms of, being able to sub guys in this 25-second play clock in the running game clock. But what's awesome is, so they're going to have the running game clock pretty much the whole game, whether it's an incomplete pass, out of bounds, doesn't matter. Until you get to the ends of each half where it's 2 minutes, and this is called the comeback period, which is one of my favorite rules, where the clock is going to stop every play. So, for example, if a team is, in third and 7 or something, and they're down and they're trying to get down the field, and the team they're playing is in a prevent defense, there's obviously a great situation to run and get the first down. You can now run the ball up the middle and like a draw play or something, and the clock will stop. Unlike in other leagues where it continues to run, unless college, if you get the first down, they'll stop the clock, till they spot it. But now the clock will stop. So it's no different if you run the ball up the middle or if you get out of bounds. Completely the same thing, which I love.
Yeah, I believe it stops for 5 seconds once the ball spots, and you get like a 5-second grace period before it picks back up again.
So by the time they spot it, 5 seconds, which most offenses, if you're in a situation where you're down, I don't see the clock going off at all. So that's a huge rule when you're looking at the end of games and teams not being out of it, because now you can't, if you're the other team, you really can't run the clock out.
Again, it goes back to keeping eyes on the game at all times and keeping them engaged throughout the whole game. That's what this rule is designed for, to keep the fans watching.
It just means there's going to be a lot of epic endings, right? So if you mix this rule with the point after touchdown rules, I mean, again, 3 possessions is now 2 possessions. 2 possessions now 1 possession game. And to Kenny's point, it keeps everybody glued on the TV.
Yep.
It's funny because I was talking to my girlfriend the other day. We're watching a Netflix episode. And I was like, all right, playoffs are on right now, but it's the last 2 minutes. Can we watch this Netflix movie afterward, these last 2 minutes? And she's like, fine, because she understood it's the last 2 minutes. Last 2 minutes are the best part of the game, and it makes everybody want to watch. It's phenomenal what the XFL is doing. They're listening to the fans, and this is why they're going to have people viewing this spring.
They know when the most exciting parts of the game are, and they're going to really focus on making those the most exciting that they can be. So it's a huge rule. Let's go through one more time change when we talk about replays. Kenny, I know you were excited when you heard about the replays and just keeping the pace of the game going, because we could go all day talking about the NFL and how these replays drag on. It's just awful. What the XFL is doing in terms of their replay setup.
This was my favorite rule, hands down. No more coaches challenges. They're going to have a dedicated replay official who will be stationed in a booth above the field who will initiate replay calls, and they have a 60-second time limit once these reviews are initiated to get the call done. And what's cool is they're using the Hawkeye system as well as the television broadcast angles. And what's so cool about the Hawkeye system is it's independent from broadcast, from Fox and ESPN feeds. So that means they get an extra set of angles to view these plays. So and it's instantaneously. Like if you ever watch a tennis match and they challenge if the ball was in or out, and they have that graphic that comes up that it's like within 10 seconds of the play happening.
I always wondered how they did that technology. It's fascinating.
It's wild.
Wow. And NASCAR started implementing it 2 years ago for pit road violations and to inspect pre and post race inspections on the cars. Like it creates a 3D model rendering of the car pre and post race to find out if anything changed on the car. So it's super intuitive. It's super advanced. And I think that they hit a home run on bringing in the Hawkeye system to initiate these replays.
I think one of the really cool things, too, is TV broadcasts are going to be able to listen into the replay officials actually talk about it for 60 seconds. So you ever see, like, when we watch NFL or even in college, they have the big headsets on. We're like, dude, what are they talking about? Like, what's holding this up? Not only is it going to be 60 seconds, but we're going to know what they're talking about. Which I think is cool because
no, it's great.
Right?
It's what the AAF did with
TV.
their replays, except it's not going to be CBS Sports or Bleacher Report Live or TNT doing it. It's going to be Fox, ABC, ESPN. So it's not going to be a nubs attempt at getting fans inside the conversations with these replays.
Yeah.
But the pace of play. It always comes down to the pace of play.
Yep. And it's not ticky-tacky stuff that they're reviewing either. Like, it's your standard reviews, what you would think of if you watch an NFL game, minus, like, you can't review holding or pass interference or anything like that. And then one of the I thought was interesting, they kind of adopted the college rule. If there's a player safety violation, aka probably targeting or helmet to helmet, they'll review it and they'll throw a penalty, or it could, depending on the severity, it could be an ejection. So I love what they're doing with the replay. Make it fast, make it quick, and get it and get it in gear. Let's roll.
Yep, I agree.
Yep. You know what was interesting though, and when this kind of bleeds into the timeouts, which is another innovation they have, 2 timeouts per half. There is kind of a loophole. Dean Blandino said that if you call a timeout, and this is more for the defense, this is kind of one thing that benefits the defense. If, say, there's a play that is iffy if it's going to get reviewed or not, the defense can call a timeout, and if the replay official triggers a review and it works out in the defense's favor, they actually get that timeout back. So it's kind of a loophole, almost like a coach's challenge thing. Because if a defense has 25 seconds, they might want to give that replay official a little longer to look at that play.
Okay, cool. That's not just defense, right? That's both sides of the ball, right?
Yeah, but he specifically talked about it was probably going to benefit defense more than it would offense. Because most of the stuff is going to be reviewable, is going to be on offense.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
You're going to have a shorter halftime, I believe, Kenny. 10 minutes
10
is
minutes,
what they said. So we're looking at a shorter halftime. Let's wrap up with some common sense type of rules. Things that I don't think we need to get too in depth with, but they're definitely worth mentioning. 1 foot in bounds. It's what college does.
Thank goodness.
Obviously, this simplifies everything. It makes it easier to call on the field and in a replay, and it makes it easier for the receivers to gain the catch. They want they want these plays to be successful. They want more offense. They want more action. So it just it makes sense. Ball spotting official. They're going to have a delegated ball spotting official, not the 7-man crew like in the NFL. They have a person that's running up and spotting the ball. They have someone that is their job is to spot the ball.
You better be in shape. I tell you that. Better be in shape.
And then here's one I want to kind of focus on a little bit because it's such a big deal. Coach-player communication. This is still a work in progress. We'll see if it happens for week 1. I know it's going to happen eventually, but they're still kind of working through some things. They're testing it out in training camp. I believe Sam Schwartzstein, director of football operations for the XFL, he was in Dallas for the beginning of their camp testing this out. But typically in the NFL, you have you have the quarterback who's able to communicate with the coaching staff, and then you have one player on the defense. What is it, Gless? Typically, you're
middle linebacker.
It's a linebacker. It could be a safety. It could be whoever the coordinator wants to.
But it's one person for each unit. Where that's changed
correct.
Here, where all skill position players are on the offense are going to be given communication, which is huge. And then on the defense, it's been kind of some confusion around it. Kenny, can you clear this up? What did Dean Blandino say when asked the question about how many defensive players will have that access to communication in their helmets?
Yeah, so someone on Dean Blandino's Reddit Ask Me Anything, AMA, talked about, how come all the skill position players on offense get the communication, direct communication, but only one player on defense? And Dean responded, it's actually not just one player. It'll be one defensive lineman, one linebacker or corner, and one safety. So up to 3 players on defense will have basically one at each level, essentially, unless they go corner and safety for their communication. But 3 players at all times on defense will have direct communication.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. See, this is one, Gless, where it's still this is one of the few rules that I'm a little concerned about, and I love the communication aspect of it. Obviously, it's pretty epic if they can get it to work right. My thing is, all of these rules for the most part are tailoring the offense, which I get. People love action, they love scoring, they love offense. So if you want people to watch your product, you need to enhance offense as much as possible. But I feel like this is kind of weighing a little too far in the offense's favor, where you have all these wide receivers getting calls in from their coaches, but you only get 3 total players on the defense that aren't getting coached, pretty much getting calls from the sideline. I just think that kind of is swaying a little bit too much. I wish that it was the equal amount of players for each side in terms of communication and headsets.
Yeah, I agree. That the one question I have about is how this is going to work even on the offense, right? So if a offensive coordinator calls in the play and it's being reflected in the quarterback's helmet and the running back's helmet and the receiver's helmet, well, who's telling the offensive lineman? So is it going to be a huddle and then half the guys are getting the play and then the other half aren't, so you got to repeat it? Or is the communication mainly going to be used for substitution packages to where the quarterback would still call it? Or is it going to favor no huddle offenses to where, hey, the receivers and running backs really are already going to know where to line up, and the quarterback's just going to go to the offensive line a yard or 2 off the ball and just quickly tell them the play, and they're going to get a lineup and go. I thought about that quickly before we got on. I was like, in theory, no huddle would make sense, but you still have 5 guys that still need to know what the play is. So I'm curious to see how it's going to work on the offensive side of the ball. But Riley, I agree with you, because if it's one defensive lineman, then is the defensive lineman going to reflect it to the other defensive lineman? Same with the linebacker and then the secondary. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. I'm a little bit confused why they just don't give it to everybody. I guess why limit it to 3? Why not just limit it to 11 on 11? But I'm not sure.
I mean, I think,
man, technology is a pain in the ass. Nothing ever
works right. You know what? That's a good point, though. You know what? I like that. I'm going to take that as an answer.
It's a very underthought.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Glutz, you know what I think when you talked, I was thinking when you were talking about how they can let the offensive linemen know, I thought back to our 3-on-3 football games in your backyard where we're yelling out single word plays like Tebow and Tennessee and Washington and all this stuff. They might just have a quick, and we also had dummy stuff built into there too. It could just be quick 1-word cadence or a dummy call or whatever, and they just go.
Sure. Coaches know that right now. They're going through training camp. They're making packages where they can yell words, and the offensive linemen know what they're doing, whether it's an RPO, pass, run. When they're going up there, and these formations are getting set, whether it's trips right, ace formation, it's happening as they're getting to the line of scrimmage. The offensive line knows what it means, and it makes that 25-second play clock way more feasible by having that in their ear and getting set as they're getting up to the line of scrimmage.
Yep. You can also have coaches putting up cards on the sideline. Like you see that all the time in college, like all those different play cards. Yeah. And so I would imagine they'll probably use some sort of system like that. So I'll also love to see how it works with the different schemes, right? Like with June Jones, the run and shoot, right? That's pretty easy because you're never going to see any tight ends out there. Air raid, you're going to see one tight end, but mostly like receivers and guys in the shotgun, right? But then you get Pep Hamilton, who's going to roll out multiple tight ends, multiple running backs, right? Like they're probably going to huddle up traditionally. And then you may see the same thing in Los Angeles and in Seattle. So it'll be awesome to see the different teams kind of use the different communication style based on the rules.
It's going to be fun.
I think before we wrap up, did you guys see the coaches give their takes on the XFL rules? Funny. Winston Moss is something else, man. That guy's hilarious. Not only did he yell at me in a conference call before the holidays about his Scrooge behavior on the bus and minicamp, but in this video, so you have all these coaches. You can check it out. I'm sure it's on XFL.com if you haven't seen it. But all these coaches are giving basically coach speak. Talking about the rules, breaking them down, how it's going to affect, strategy of the game. And then it gets to Winston Moss, and he's like, how's it going to affect you? How's it going to affect the Wildcats? 0. Not going to affect us. The Wildcat way.
The Wildcat way.
With Wildcat mentality. 0 impact. I loved it.
Just not having it. Not going to affect us at all.
I love him, man. He's awesome.
Yeah,
he's becoming probably my favorite coach in the league. Man. Just
I can't wait till his like halftime and post game interviews. I mean, it's going to be must watch TV
throughout the season. I love that they threw it. The XFL staff, they threw it like in the middle. They didn't wait till the end. It was like serious answer, serious answer, serious answer. 0, not going to affect us. Serious answer, serious answer.
And it couldn't have been more contrasting because you go from Winston Moss, who's like a 10-second clip, and then you go to Pep Hamilton, who's like a minute clip of this.
Who legitimately is like breaking down the rules,
analyzing it. Yeah.
Plus, you know what? He reminds me of that coach. Remember, he's like, players are playing a great game, but the coaches are screwing it up.
Coaches screwing it up. It was like the interim coach for Alabama. Yeah.
I cannot wait.
I can't wait to hear his in-game stuff.
I can't wait to see how the coaches handle these rules when it comes to strategy. And just like the players, I think it's going to take them a while to adjust and get used to it. And I think coaches that can adapt the quickest are, teams that we're going to see have more success on the field. But overall, well done, XFL. A lot of these rules I think are going to be so exciting, reimagining the game for sure. If you want to check out the rules, go to xfl.com. They're right on the homepage, so you can read more into them. Check us out at xflchalktalk.com. And we're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at XFL Chalk. What's up, football fans? This is Riley from XFL Chalk Talk. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all things XFL and interact with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at XFL Chalk Talk.